On August 28, 2025, American citizen Mark Rogers and his son, Duncan Castrillo, were last seen near the 3,500 block in a coastal city in Brazil. After that, they vanished without a trace, leaving friends and colleagues deeply concerned. For 5 long days, uncertainty and fear grew, until September 2nd, when the case took an unexpected turn. To understand what happened to Mark and Duncan, we first need to know who they were and how they ended up in Brazil. Mark Alexander Cummings Rogers was 48 or 49 years old. Some sources say 48, others 49, so his exact age is unclear. He was an American citizen, born in California, and a widower from his first marriage. According to reports, during a visit to Brazil, Mark fell in love with the country and decided to make it his home. He chose to live along Brazil's southern coast. About 6 years ago, he settled in an upscale beach neighborhood called Praia Brava, just a few miles from the popular coastal town of Balneário Camboriú. Praia Brava is known for its stunning natural beauty, with white sandy beaches and surf-friendly waves, attracting tourists from around the world. Mark seemed happy with his life in the city. He worked as a real estate agent, handling rentals and sales along the northern coast, a hot market fueled by tourism and the region's economic growth. Mark was well known in his professional field. He was also respected and, according to friends, charismatic, with a natural ability to connect with anyone. He attended local events, interacted with neighbors, and seemed to have found his place in Brazil. By his side was his son, Duncan Edward Castrillo, a 13-year-old described as intelligent and well-mannered. Unlike his father, Duncan was not born in the United States, but in Nicaragua. Sources say Duncan is the result of a relationship Mark had with a woman he met in Nicaragua. That woman reportedly lives in the United States, leaving Mark fully responsible for his son while they were in Brazil. According to those close to them, father and son were very close. They were often seen together enjoying outdoor activities. Mark, described as a devoted father, encouraged Duncan to practice sports, especially skateboarding, a passion they both shared. Photos on social media show the pair smiling, enjoying the sun, whether at the beach or in parks. Mark was also known for his outgoing personality. He participated in community events, spoke with local realtors, and had a wide circle of friends, including both Brazilians and expatriates living in the area. Duncan, for his part, was a typical teenager, attending school, making friends, and seemingly adapting well to life in Brazil. There were no signs of serious problems, family conflicts, or any indication that something was wrong, at least not until August 28, 2025. But there was something peculiar about Mark that caught the attention of some friends. A close acquaintance revealed that Mark was fascinated by UFOs. He was described as obsessed with the topic, although details about how this manifested in his life are unclear. Sources do not indicate whether he participated in online forums about extraterrestrials, collected books on the subject, or simply enjoyed watching documentaries. There is also no concrete evidence that this obsession had any connection to what would happen to father and son. Still, this detail adds a layer of mystery to the case, something we will explore later. For now, what matters is that Mark and Duncan led an apparently normal life until everything changed in a single night. Now let's move to August 28th. It was a typical Thursday in Balneário Camboriú, a city that never sleeps, with its beaches full of tourists, crowded restaurants, and a summer-like vibe, even during the Brazilian winter. Mark and Duncan were last seen on 3,500 Street, one of the busiest roads in the city center. This street, lined with modern buildings, high-end shops, and cafes, is the commercial heart of Balneário Camboriú. It wasn't the kind of place where someone could disappear unnoticed, which made the case even more baffling. According to a friend of Mark, speaking to a local news outlet, father and son had simple plans for the day. They left home intending to visit a nearby shopping mall for a quick meal at a cafe. It may have been a routine outing, something they did often like so many other families. Perhaps they planned to grab a snack, chat about their day, or just enjoy the lively mall atmosphere. But something went wrong, very wrong. After being seen on 3,500 Street, Mark and Duncan simply vanished. There were no messages, calls, or any sign of their whereabouts. Their phones, which could have provided clues, were offline. Friends tried to get in touch but received no response. On Saturday, August 30th, friends went to the apartment where the father and son lived. and found a scene that was, at the very least, concerning. Clothes and boxes were scattered around, a fan was left running, and the pet cats had no food or water. Everything was very strange. The lack of communication was the first sign that something was seriously off. Balneario Camboriú is a city with security cameras on nearly every corner, especially downtown. It's hard to imagine two people vanishing without a trace in such a heavily monitored place. But at that moment, no one knew what was happening. Mark and Duncan seemed to have evaporated. What makes this moment so crucial is the lack of details about what happened between the time they were last seen on 3500 Street and the silence that followed. Did they make it to the mall? Did they eat at the cafe as planned? Or did something divert them along the way? No confirmed witnesses reported seeing them at the mall, raising the possibility that they never arrived. 3500 Street is a busy area, with constant traffic and people coming and going. The odds are high that someone must have seen something. Yet so far, no witness has come forward with concrete information. This void of information is what makes the case so intriguing, and at the same time so frustrating for those following it. To make matters worse, Balneario Camboriú was experiencing unstable weather. In the days leading up to the disappearance, heavy rains had caused flooding in some parts of the city, which may have complicated visibility or even the initial search efforts. However, there is no indication that the weather was directly linked to the disappearance of Mark and Duncan. Still, the backdrop of a city recovering from floods, with wet streets and an atmosphere of tension, added a dramatic layer to the case. Could Mark and Duncan have been caught up in some unexpected weather-related event? Or was their disappearance driven by something entirely different? The story takes a darker turn with the next chapter, when an alarming discovery changed the course of the investigation. On the morning of Friday, August 29, 2025, less than 24 hours after Mark and Duncan were last seen, a discovery came to light. The father and son's cell phones were found at a construction site in Balneario Camboriú. The phones, which could have been the key to tracking their movements, were discovered in a place that, at first glance, had no obvious connection to their daily routine. This detail is one of the few concrete facts we have about the case, but also one of the most puzzling. How did the phones end up at a construction site? Were they left there deliberately or discarded by someone else? The devices, 2 iPhones that were turned on and had battery, were intact but locked. A construction worker alerted the military police, who collected the phones and filed an incident report as a found object. The same friend who had spoken to local media was called in to identify the devices, and upon seeing them, confirmed they belonged to Mark and Duncan. Up until that point, friends and acquaintances might have thought Mark and Duncan had simply chosen to step away for personal reasons. But the fact that their phones turned up in such an unusual place suggested something far more serious. Were they forced to abandon their devices? Or did someone else take them and discard them at the site to throw off investigators? The police, which took over the investigation, has handled the case with notable discretion, typical in disappearance cases, yet a strategy that often heightens public intrigue. Another crucial point is what the phones represent. In 2025, a cell phone is more than just a communication device. It's practically an extension of our lives. It holds messages, photos, location history, contacts, everything that could help piece together the final moments of Mark and Duncan. If the devices were recovered, did the police manage to access their contents? Were there suspicious calls or messages? Or had someone wiped them clean, leaving nothing behind? These unanswered questions only deepen speculation about what happened on the night of August 28th. With the discovery of the phones, both local law enforcement agencies became involved. The first responders, who initially released information about the case, shared phone numbers with the public for tips, numbers that quickly became a lifeline for those hoping to find Mark and Duncan. Meanwhile, the investigative authorities took over the formal investigation but chose to keep it under wraps, meaning few details have been shared with the media or the public. This decision, while standard in sensitive cases, has left friends, neighbors, and onlookers frustrated and searching for answers. One of the biggest challenges in the investigation was the absence of Mark and Duncan's family in Brazil. Mark, as previously mentioned, was a widower, and Duncan had no close relatives in the country. This created a bureaucratic problem. Who could file the police report? In disappearance cases, it's usually a close family member who goes to the station to formally register the complaint. But in this case, the closest person to Duncan was his mother, who lives in the United States. According to sources, she attempted to file the report remotely, but was informed that it wasn't possible, as Brazilian law requires the physical presence of a responsible party to formalize the complaint. This barrier delayed the official start of the search, leaving Mark and Duncan's friends in a difficult position trying to fill that gap. Residents of Praia Brava mobilized, sharing information on social media and cooperating with the police, but the lack of a direct relative complicated the process. Imagine the frustration. Two people vanish, and bureaucracy prevents the search from moving forward with the urgency it demands. This detail shows how, even in a case this serious, administrative hurdles can complicate everything. Meanwhile, the military police kept asking for the public's help. Balneario Camboriú is a city filled with security cameras, especially downtown, where Mark and Duncan were last seen. Did those cameras capture anything? Were there images of Mark and Duncan entering the mall or leaving Rua 3500? So far, no footage has been released, which could mean either the authorities found nothing relevant or they are holding on to the recordings to protect the investigation. The lack of transparency, while understandable, fuels curiosity and anxiety for those desperate for answers. On August 31st, 3 days after the disappearance, a new lead emerged. The military police located Mark's car in Balneario Camboriú. This discovery brought a mix of hope and apprehension. The car was a key piece of the puzzle, potentially holding crucial evidence: fingerprints, personal belongings, or even signs of a struggle. But once again, authorities chose to keep details under wraps. We don't know where exactly the car was found, whether it was locked, damaged, or if it contained anything that could shed light on what happened to Mark and Duncan. The discovery of the vehicle, however, confirmed that the search was progressing, even if slowly. The lack of information about the car's condition is frustrating. If it was intact, it could suggest that Mark left it voluntarily. But if there were signs of forced entry or damage, it could point to something more sinister. With so few concrete leads, the case of Mark and Duncan began to spark theories and speculation. One of the most curious stemmed from a report mentioning Mark's obsession with UFOs. For some, it's just an eccentric detail unrelated to the disappearance. For others, it's a clue that fuels conspiracy theories. Another theory revolves around the phones found at the construction site. The presence of the devices there suggests that someone wanted to get rid of them. But who and why? One possibility is that Mark and Duncan were victims of a crime, such as a robbery or kidnapping, and the phones were discarded to prevent tracking. Another possibility is that they themselves left the devices there, perhaps to mislead someone. But this seems unlikely, as there's no evidence that Mark or Duncan were fleeing from anything or anyone. While authorities investigated, some local residents sprang into action. Friends of Mark and Duncan shared appeals on social media, asking anyone with information to contact the police. Posters with photos of the father and son began circulating, and the story gained attention in regional news outlets. The solidarity of the local community highlights how much Mark and Duncan were loved in the area, and the void their disappearance has left. Hey guys, when I first wrote the script for this video and recorded part of it, Mark and Duncan were still missing. But after the video was done, the case got resolved, so I decided to record this update separately to bring you guys up to speed. After 5 days of anguish, uncertainty, and tireless searching, the mystery of the disappearance of Mark Alexander Cummings Rogers and his son, Duncan Edward Castrillo, finally came to an end. On the afternoon of Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025, around 2:30 p.m., the fire department found the father and son alive in a wooded area. Mark and Duncan were discovered, bringing relief to friends, neighbors, and everyone who had been following this puzzling case. But the story behind this outcome is just as surprising as the disappearance itself. According to the fire department, as reported by local media, Mark and Duncan were voluntarily camping in the woods near the spot where Mark's black Jeep Compass was found abandoned on Queens Road. The search teams, which included the police and the fire department, used sniffer dogs, drones, and hiked trails to locate them. When found, both were in good health, with access to water and food, indicating they were prepared to spend a few days in the wilderness. Images released show Mark and Duncan looking fine as they were escorted by authorities after the rescue. But why were Mark and Duncan camping in the woods? Here, the story takes an unexpected turn. According to reports, Mark had planned to simulate a reality show experience with his son, a kind of survival challenge in the wild, similar to the show Naked and Afraid, but with clothes, of course. After the rescue, the police took father and son to the Criminal Investigation Division to clarify the details of what happened during those 5 days. Mark's claim about planning a reality show experience raised suspicions of potential mental health issues, or even the use of illicit substances. However, these are only suspicions that can only be confirmed through proper examinations. So far, authorities have not released an official statement from Mark and Duncan, and the case remains under investigation to clarify all the facts. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. Mark and Duncan are safe, and the mystery of their disappearance has finally come to an end. But the story behind it was certainly unexpected. What do you think about this case? Did you see this ending coming, or did it surprise you as much as it surprised everyone here? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.